What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 80 of Value Town. I'm ChanManV, and joining me today are Noxious and our first-time guest, Dills, from Angry Chicken and many other podcasts dealing with Blizzard titles, including, Angry Chicken, The Instance, what else, man?
I also do Stormcast, which is a Heroes podcast.
Yeah, Stormcast.
And,
Oh, man.
and I was briefly on Into the Nexus, which is another Heroes podcast back in the day with Garrett.
Yeah.
But yeah, swapped over.
Swapped over.
How did Heroes go for you
exactly.
is the question. But yeah.
Well, I really enjoy Heroes, but I'm a bad player. So I bring that aspect to the podcast.
Everybody
I
needs
talk
a bad
about the
player.
Silver League. Yeah.
I do the same here, so we're good.
That's funny, man.
I'm telling you all those silver and bronze strats, that you don't know about up there.
Oh yeah, dude! I can't wait to hear about those tower dives.
Wait,
Yeah, it's like,
you
oh,
guys
yeah.
telling me Murky's not good? What?
Yeah, he's not
Oh,
meta.
my
You can't
God.
just play Murky every time in every lane ever.
Oh, I
God.
wish I knew I wish I knew about anything you're talking about right now, but I can honestly say I don't play Heroes of the Storm very much. So
It's not for everyone, man. It really
It's
is.
cool, dude.
It's MOBAs,
It's a great
man.
game, though.
MOBAs, they just drive.
You're
for
not
me,
missing
though,
out on much, personally. I think.
If you're a Blizz fanboy like me, like the draw was just all of the Blizzard characters all in one place.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True.
So whether I'm good at it or not, it doesn't matter. I get to play Arthas, and then I'm fighting Diablo.
Dude, the
You
dream,
know, when you put it
man.
that way.
The total dream there.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, it's gonna be fun having you on. Those of you wondering about Ray is he's at Seatstory as well as pretty much every player right now, except for maybe a few streamers. But we'll be talking about Seatstory. We got lots to talk about. Obviously, you can see in the topic bar here. We've got unicorns and rainbows. No, just unicorns, guys. Priest unicorns, and the whole Ben Brode thing. Going to talk about or speculate as to what the next adventure is going to be, since there's been a lot of clues and obviously a lot of people on Reddit making videos and speculations. Do a little bit of recap on Dreamhack Valencia and take a quick look at Seatstory Cup coming up this week. Then we got Mekkatorque Workshop again, and we got a few new cards that priest cards. This is the theme today. Is priest, obviously. So we'll talk about some priest cards that we've come up with. And if you've come up with any either, guys, be sure to link it like in chat or I don't know, maybe ask a mod to allow you to link it in chat. That might be good. And at the end, guys, viewer Q&A as always. Tweet your questions to either myself at ChanManV or ValueTownGG, and we'll try to read as many as we can at the end of the show. All right, our week in Hearthstone. So, what did you guys do this week? Anything cool? Tavern brawl?
Yeah, a bit of that.
decks?
I don't
What
know,
do you guys
man.
do?
I played mostly priest. There's been this kind of hunt
that's
for the
pretty much.
priest, the Ben Brode priest, which,
Yeah.
in hindsight, we obviously have been kind of messing with him a little bit because we keep saying, oh yeah, Ben Brode totally told us that there's this secret priest deck waiting to be found.
Yes.
That's probably got a huge win rate internally. So we're like a little bit of a jab, Team 5, I guess, by just going on this quest to find a good priest deck, which, by the way, we haven't, not really at least. And yeah, it was an interesting thing. I've played everything from Murloc Priest all the way to Combo Priest, so that was fun. I had a lot of fun with that.
Will?
Yeah, I've been having a weird Hearthstone month because I was out of town, and then I was out of town again, and so I basically just all I did was when I streamed, I did like arena or messed around with. I tried making a quad god warrior deck work where I played all the old gods in one deck. I've been doing all this
I've done
bizarre
that too,
stuff.
man. I've done that too.
So yeah, so I the other night I was like, I guess I should play like a legitimate deck for once, and I was like rank 15 still or something, because I just hadn't been playing anything serious. I think I'm higher in wild right now this month than I am
Oh
in
my
standard.
God.
But so then I started playing that OTK deck, and yeah, that deck kind of crushes, man. That warrior deck.
The warrior deck, yeah.
Yeah, it's the new hotness, So
Definitely. It showed up on all the meta reports this week.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. I've played it a lot. I mean, I just basically play warrior 85% of my games are against warrior.
I'm at this
It
weird
doesn't-
spot. I'm golden warrior now, and I still have a few non-golden classes I feel like I need to be working on, but I need to play warrior because that's just the best class. I don't know.
It is the best class, and normally it's like when you're playing, 85% of a certain class, you can just come up with some deck and you counter it, and yeah, you get to legend like really, really quick, right? But the problem is
Yeah.
the Warriors. There's like a million different decks with Warriors now, so you don't even know what the heck you're playing until like turn 5 or turn 6. So
They all have
You're
the
like,
same
oh,
early
he
game
played a
too.
Fiery War Axe. Let's figure out what deck this is.
right, exactly. So the priest quest, I think that's been a community-wide quest for the most part, and I don't know if it's like throwing we're throwing a challenge to Team 5 since Ben alluded that there was one, so it was more of just like
Not even that, dude.
a hunt for it.
He didn't even say there was one. He
He
said
just alluded
there
was.
like it is possible there is a good priest deck. Like saying it is possible there's a good priest deck doesn't even start to say, oh yeah, we found some decent priest decks internally. It might just mean the class is utter shit. We know it's bad, but there might be one that nobody's thought of.
But he didn't say
It's
it like
like-
that.
That's what he meant.
No,
though,
that's what he
really.
meant.
Yeah, that's what he
though.
meant, though. Yes, he's
Sure.
clarified it, by the way, guys. That might not have seen it.
Well, he thinks it's
clarified it.
hilarious that it's turned into an
Yeah.
outright meme.
I wish you know what? I wish Ben wouldn't have said anything and just let him go.
Let
on
it
this
happen.
thing. Yeah, just
Yeah.
let it happen because it's
No,
been-
but people
it's
were
been
firing
cool.
shots, dude.
Yeah,
People were firing a
that's
lot of
the only
shots.
reason. That's the
Yeah, they took it way too literally because when I started this, I was laughing a little bit because there was like this report on Hearthstone about like, a Ben Bro tweet, and it said there might be a viable priest deck, and that's when I started the quest like on my channel for fun. And like 2 days later, suddenly Reddit blows up with like, oh yeah, there's a good priest deck lurking around. I'm like, oh god, they totally misread that. And now, 3 days later, it's literally Ben Bro sucks at design. Everybody fire him. He's completely disconnected from reality. Like it's complete nonsense. Is what happened with that. So that was a fun flaming moment, and you had to clarify, otherwise it was
Yeah.
just gonna get out of hand. I think.
He basically just like lit a match and just like tossed it. in the room. It was
I
like,
know
"What's up?" Yeah.
Hey, but you know what? Just having something that at least all the community's doing is always a really cool thing. We don't get a
Sure.
chance to do that very often. I mean, like something similar was just the whole arena thing. Not all of us can do just the whole 110 thing, but it's neat whenever things like this happen.
No, I mean, I dig it. I think it's actually not totally new to Priest either. Someone like Zedalot being known for Priest, it's kind of being known to make a class that's pretty bad work. And it's like a special talent to be able to figure that out. And I know Yang Wu for a long time, that was like his jam too, was he always tried to take the worst class that everyone thought was terrible.
Yeah.
And at one time, believe it or not, that was Hunter. And he was playing like a weird
I remember
secret Hunter deck. Back then, I mean, ChanManV, you were one of the ones who figured out how to make a Hunter deck work a long time ago.
A long time ago.
But like he just has always been into that. So I think it's a thing that Team 5 people. I think Ixar is similar. He tries to make weird stuff work, and so Ben Bro just saying that like, well, I see Ixar make weird stuff work. I'm sure there's a priest deck out there somewhere. But then we all went a little crazy. I think Fireback kind of stirred it up a little too with his. He made literal videos like hunting for the unicorn priest deck.
Well, Firebat was on here, and I mean, we were talking about it, and this might have even been before Ben actually made that statement. Yeah, we were already see like what you're talking about, Yongwu and those guys. That's what me and Noxious do like every day. For the most part. We just try to come up with whatever craziness when it comes to just weak classes. But yeah, Firebat was on here, and I remember we just both, or the three of us, it was almost like a challenge just to try to come up with stuff. And Firebat literally spent days and days coming up with things, which was really, really cool. But anyways, why don't we talk about some of the decks that we came up with since we're already talking about Priest?
Sure.
Okay, so Will, why don't we start with yours?
Okay. So this deck is basically just theory crafting the idea that maybe because the Priest cards aren't good enough to win, maybe I could just kill all your stuff and then get really good legendaries with the leaks.
Right.
So, like, the idea was just put in all the cards that kill things and just try to outlast, play a monkey, then end up with a bunch of 8 and 9 drops that are sick. And
Yeah, I've definitely.
it's actually not that bad. I ended up winning more than I lost with it, but it wasn't like some meta-breaking deck. Like you still rely on getting the right cards at the right time, which is just kind of the problem with Priest in general. And also, like, this deck isn't running like things like Wild Pyromancer and stuff. So
I noticed.
you miss out on some of that. So you really need the Arcanized Circle. It is running Excavated and Holy Nova, so you do have plenty of AOE. But Holy Nova is
Darkshire
really
could
not
go
that
away,
good
right?
anymore.
Yeah. What do you think about the Darkshire? Like that could be a cut for Wild Pyro if you really want to add like more of the
Yeah.
the AoE.
Yeah.
And I find like with Doomsayer, because one of the things that Elise does, right, is it turns your useless cards into legendaries later, and you'll have a lot of those useless cards in a pure
Yep.
Control
priest,
matchup, yeah.
which is kind of the point, right? Like you have all these Shadow Word Pains that were never used against a certain deck, or Shadow Word Deaths later on that ended up being useless because you whittled down a minion with double Excavate Evil, or you entombed it. So you end up with like a ton of those empty, no value cards that you turn into legendaries. And I feel like Darkshire Alchemist would probably be a better fit for those decks with like Injured Blade Master, kind of like the standard priest, right?
The idea behind the Darkshire Alchemist was it was a way. It actually ended up in some games just giving me some reach because I had Embrace the Shadow and Akanai. Yeah. So it was kind of awkward how that would happen sometimes, where I would just continue to kill stuff and then maybe just a couple of minions would live long enough to start beating on the guy.
Sure.
And so that actually ended up happening a few times, but for the most part, I won against control decks with like Entomb. Or I won against aggro decks by them conceding because they got sick of like me wiping their board, and that was really how I ended up.
Where's Shadow Madness, dude? You need to go with. You need to
Shadow Madness. Trash, dude.
No, you cut Darkshire Alchemist. You put in Shadow Madness, and you actually got a kill all things deck.
Okay. If you're gonna follow the theme, if you follow the theme,
one of my favorite cards.
Yeah. So for all the audio listeners, I forget this. I just want to make a quick rundown of this deck. So it's got 2 circles of healings, 2 flash heals, 2 powered shields, 2 Northshire clerics, 1 Embrace the Shadow, 2 Shadow Word Pains, 2 Doomsayers, 2 Shadow Word Deaths, 2 Akanai Soul Priest, Elise Starseeker, Excavated Evils, Holy Novas, Darkshires, Harrison Jones, Entomb, Cabal, and Sylvanas. So you're
and
really
double
relying.
Cabal Shadow Priest is like it's the other idea behind this deck was I was going to run 2 of everything just to make it like I'm going to draw those cards that I need when I need them. Because the other thing too about this deck, the only draw in the deck is Power Word Shield and Northshire Cleric. So if I'm not drawing with those, then I'm not drawing at all, right? It's like I need to make sure that the important cards actually end up getting drawn, and I think that might be a little bit of the weakness is that there's not enough teching back and forth about what actually I might see. I'm just kind of like 2 of everything, let's go.
You're jamming all the spells that kill stuff, and without any consideration for what you might encounter.
Straightforward,
but I mean, there's no meta, right? Like one of the things that's interesting right now is like Priest was good back when you knew what you were going to be facing off against, but right now it's like this huge variety and spread to where you can't really build a good priest deck since there's no one thing you want to be targeting. Like you want to beat aggro. It used to be that Shadow Word Pain was good, but now you want to beat aggro and you get beat down by 7/7s, and suddenly like the Shadow Word Pain is no longer sufficient. Darkshire Councilman comes out. You still need your death against aggro. So it's all these little things that conspired to make the reactive deck building of Priest completely irrelevant. And now that's why it struggles so much.
It's also really, really tough right now because Priest has always had a problem with mid-range decks. And, right now you've got that Dragon Warrior and you've got Hunter just popping up too. And like for me, Hunter's almost like it's a terrible matchup no matter what Priest I'm playing against, because
I did almost good against Hunter with Cthulhu Priest actually. But because you heal for 10, and you're like, what's up?
5 hero power is gone.
Well, you can heal for 20 if you really, but you never get that low, unfortunately. Like with Warrior, it's nice. You always get that 20 no matter what. But with Priest, you're capped at 30. So a lot of times it is only 10.
That's the issue with Cthulhu Priest. You're like, this card's amazing, but I'm at 25 health. So.
Right. Exactly. So this is definitely a cool deck, and it wrecks. Like I remember playing this deck, and it did really well against aggro when the aggro meta was there. But now, like Noxious said, it's just like there's equal number of aggro decks with control decks. So it's just like wow. And I don't think control wise, even with Entomb and stuff, it's pretty tough against the Zoth decks. And
not really. Chance against the Zoth if they actually do it, unless I can entomb key death rattle cards, then I'm screwed.
I think one of the things this deck could do, and that's gonna sound weird, is just cut the Northshire clerics because you don't have Blade Masters. There's a lot of things you'll never heal. So if you could find just a better card draw engine, whether you even go as far as putting in loot hoarders instead, or find maybe room for resurrect. Like, you cut the Darkshires, you cut the Northshire, and you put in double Resurrect, double Loot Hoarder. Suddenly, your Doomsayers come back, or your Loot Hoarders early game, and otherwise it's going to be Akanai, and Sylvanas, or whatever it is that you ended up stealing from them. So it's like, you can build interesting decks, but the issue is whenever I look at this type of list and Resurrect looks good, I realize that I could just be building an Azoth deck with Resurrect, and it's like 75 times better across the board. But I mean, I just love pure control, man.
But I think this is the problem with Priest, though, right now, right? Is like there's not enough room to mess around with different ideas within Priest. That's the problem. I think it's like you could do OTK, you could
mess around with it, but win.
You're always like, I could just be playing this though. And,
well, it's just, I mean, we always, this is a recurring theme, always talking about just minions, but there just isn't a extremely powerful minion for Priest early game, and because of that, Priest always ends up defaulting to some kind of removal or some type of passive value in the very beginning, which requires some type of removal later, or some huge swing right in the middle of the game, and that's unfortunately where we are with Priest. So like early game, Northshire Cleric is really weak right now against almost everything that everybody's playing. So you don't play it turn one. You just don't play it turn one. It's crazy. So Northshire Cleric and Power Word Shield is actually something I've been evaluating and just not playing. And anyway, the Noxious segueing into my Resurrect deck. That's a N'Zoth deck too. We might as well just bring this up. So,
sure, go ahead. I mean, it's probably going to be there's a lot of ways to build that type of deck. So go ahead and go
so
for yours.
This is my Resurrect. So I've been basically playing around with Resurrect and trying to figure out just something that works value-wise, and just something that against what's really popular right now, particularly Warrior. This one has the circles. It has one Forbidden Shaping. It has Loot Hoarders, Resurrects, Shadow Word Pains, Blade Masters, Shadow Word Deaths, Aconized Shifting Shades, Darkshire, Excavated Evil, one Faceless, Manipulator, Harrison Jones, Cairn, Entomb, Justicar, Sylvanas, Baron Geddon, Deathwing, and N'Zoth. All right, so there's a lot of stuff in there. But Resurrect is something that I think always gets good value, because it's only 2 mana, right? So it doesn't even matter. I mean, there's no 1-drop in this deck, so 2 mana you'll always get 2 mana value wise, and almost most of the time you'll get something better. So it's really early game, like how to deal with early game, right? And
it's interesting to me that you chose to not put Pyros though, because with Resurrect they're still busted as all hell.
Well, the problem with Pyro is that when you Resurrect Pyro, it triggers it too. It triggers it too.
That's kind of the point though, right? Like against aggro, it's really good.
But a lot of times when I play Resurrect, I'm not... Well, I guess that's true. It's the same with Doomsayer. Like, if I've played Doomsayer in this deck too, and you can replace, like, Forbidden Shaping or even Shadow Word Pain with a Doomsayer, and you can get that full board clear, and it's really nice like that. I've been... the Injured Blade Master is always the great scenario, right? When you can get a Resurrect on that, and sometimes you can get that Resurrect Loot Hoarder, just a double play on the turn 4, which ends up being just super strong. I almost win the majority of the games that start like that. But in the end, you tend to lose. You pretty much just lose tempo in the very beginning, and then with the heals, I found like having both the Alchemists, the Darkshire Alchemists, was essential to me staying alive against some of the mid-range decks. You can, against aggro decks, you just clear the board. I mean, this deck is actually great against aggro. I'd actually lose very little.
So here's the thing. I love the concept behind it, like the whole N'Zoth Priest. I think is perfect with Resurrect. I think it's a good fit. But I like without Northshire Cleric, Pyro, Flash Shields, and Powered Shields, I feel like that. You mentioned the aggro being an issue, hence the Shadow Word Pains, right?
No, actually
you put them in.
Not an issue, is what I'm saying.
Well, you have to survive the early game. That's what you said when you initially started talking about the deck.
Sure, and usually you survive it by just throwing any kind of minions that they just trade into. And if they don't trade into it, then you have a chance of just taking board, right? So a lot of times your minions early are just basically heals, right? And or at least I view them that way. And eventually, if I get to Baron, and if I get to Deathwing, it's just over. But if I get to one of
what
those,
is early? What is early?
Just like
because
the first 4 turns just first 4 turns. If I can get through that, and if I have Aconite, then it's going to reset it basically at that point. And if I don't, then hopefully my healing can bridge it to some of my other board swinging type of minions. Sure. And more times than not, it does. Like 70% of the time, I beat shamans and
so what are you trying to faceless most of the time?
Faceless. So faceless, that's another card that's actually flex. You could pop that one out. I use it mostly to there's just been so many rags that I didn't want to play Entomb. I felt was a little too slow, so I'm only playing one Entomb. And just those type of swings where you faceless and you just Shadow Word Death, that type of swing I think have been game winning at times. So been playing around with faceless. I feel like faceless has a lot of value right now in all kinds of different control decks. So been messing around with that too. One of the biggest MVPs in this deck, guys, is just Deathwing. Deathwing is so good right now, like against mid range and aggro. I feel like you can play it in a lot of decks right now. And we've seen it put into the Dragon Warrior a few times just to just to beat mirror matchups and things like that. And I feel like it has the same value here. It's extremely good. It's won me, I can't even tell you how many games against classes, particularly that don't have any kind of easy removal, right? Or the class doesn't have a built-in removal for a huge target. And then of course N'Zoth. N'Zoth is just great, and Shifting Shade's been great too. I'm actually starting to love that card, Shifting Shade.
It's good in the N'Zoth decks for sure, because the thing is, like, your version is a bit different, but usually it lets you curve off of the 1, 2, 3, 4 without having to rely on like, let's say a combo card like Holy Champion or Akanai, both of which are very narrow in the way you want to be using them. So that's exactly where that card fits, right? It's just it's a filler, and it's not even that bad of one. So
and it makes sure that you kind of stay ahead in cards, which I think is just so good. When you get it back with N'Zoth, it's awesome. So have you found Forbidden Shaping being more of like a fill in the gaps, or are you waiting
pretty
for
much
turn
what
8?
it is. No. I mean, obviously, it's great when you can get.
You play it on 8, obviously.
Yeah, 8 is just the best.
I feel like
right?
it can shine as just like, I'm not curving out correctly. Just go, do something this turn.
Sure,
exactly. I mean, and sometimes you get super lucky and get something incredible, and then your Resurrect brings it back, and it's awesome. So I've just been using that as flex. I've actually tried Spellbreaker too, just silence in some ways to counteract.
Interesting.
Sylvanas. Yeah, Sylvanas is always the problematic card in this deck to deal with. So
here's what you could do if you want to put a silence in. Because suddenly, like, if you really want to have silence, I think suddenly Wildfire was even better, right? Like, the old builds of Priest had room for that. Because you could always, like, trigger it against aggro even.
Yeah.
And it could have the double effect of also working with Sylve. I wonder if that would be a viable way to build, like, a N'Zoth deck.
Yeah, that's definitely possible, too.
It's old school as hell, though. I'm not sure if if it works anymore.
Yeah, but the main thing, or at least the theme for this one, was Resurrect and trying to figure out value, whether it's early or late.
Sure.
There's almost nothing here that gives you bad value. I think the worst thing that you can get is a loot hoarder, really, because even Bane and Karen are good.
Yeah.
So it's really nice. It's really nice on turn 4 too. If you can get something good on, just get that Blade Master down 3, and then you can N'Zoth Resurrect and play a 2-drop. It usually works out pretty well tempo wise.
Have you thought about cutting Cairn at all? I find that in N'Zoth Priest, he's like, in N'Zoth Priest, I find that he's worse than he used to be.
But he's good against Brawl, dude. He's in those type of board clearing.
But when's the last time you've seen like too much of, like, Control Warrior seems to be a dying breed, right? Like, compared to all the other warriors, I find that the Cairn has a lot of N'Zoth value, but it's also struggling to give you the win more often than not. I mean, that's what I found. I'm not sure if that's the case for everyone, but it's definitely been an experience I've gone through so far. It's like, he used to be really good when Control Warrior came out, to be greedier than the N'Zoth Paladin and priests that were around, and then everything became Dragon and Tempo, so suddenly Brawl's gone, and I find myself with a Cairn that doesn't do as much.
Yeah, I mean, in those, like against Hunter and stuff, he does feel a little bit weak, in those particular situations. But generally speaking, though, like, I think he overall value-wise is good just to have that Bane. I get, even when you play N'Zoth, right, and somebody's been waiting with a Brawl or waiting with some kind of board-clearing combo, you at least still get that 4 or 5. That might just be enough to, to help you finish games. So I don't know. I'd find it really hard to take him out.
I mean, if you did take him out, maybe something like a Chillmom might be okay too.
Yeah, I wish I could put Taunt in this deck. That's the one thing I do wish I could put is Taunt.
The one thing like Karen, sometimes I do find it hard to spend 6 mana on a 4 or 5.
It hurts, man. It really does nowadays, right? It was good when the Zombie Paladin was around, dude. It was so good.
Exactly. All right. Why don't we go over one more deck? Heck, how about let's just go over Noxious, your deck here. So it's the OTK deck, right?
Sure. Oh man, I think you
Oh my
might.
god. Oh, Valence. Yes. Okay. Okay. This
Yeah.
is good. This is good.
So this deck is what I mean. I'd consider that deck or this deck to be one of the better priest types of decks to play right now. Personally, I'm of the opinion that combo decks for priests are still one of their best avenues to explore. I mean, N'Zoth is probably the other next one, but what I found, I mean, obviously it's worse than just OTK Warrior. You know, it's just a fact. They cycle more than you do. And they have more AoE to deal with some of the pesky Shaman and Zeus. But overall, if you're trying to build a priest deck, necessarily, like you really want it to be priest, I think this is still one of the better ways to do it. Now, this list runs Loot Hoarder, Double Acolyte, and the reason it works at all is because I added 2 Azure Drakes in it. One of the things that I used to do when I played combo is I just, played something like Injured Blade Master somewhere in there, or I played Novice Engineer to cycle on top of everything else. But what the deck was lacking is a way to get on board like a standard priest with Agnai, with Darkshire Alchemist, something very normal, right? Wild Pyro and Northshire, all that was missing from the combo list that I used to run, which was so heavy, like cycle based. But now that I build this list, it's got the ability to win on board through just Azure Drakes and Darkshire Alchemists and just Wild Pyro shenanigans like you used to. But you've got the added benefit of closing the game out with Prophet Velen. The thing that I've also noticed about the deck, or the archetype in general, is I almost don't like Northshire Cleric in it. Like, I've got 2 copies here, and I'm feeling like I'd rather have a second Loot Hoarder sometimes.
Yeah. If I were to take anything out, I think that's where you go with it, is just make sure that the draw actually happens, and you don't have to, like, combo the draw. The other thing, too, is I feel like maybe you want to double up on Excavated and drop the Holy Nova, too, if you go that route.
Sure. I mean, it's not bad at all. Like, Nova is only good in the deck because of the extra spell damage from Thalnos, and it works with Pyro, but very often, the 2 health, like, again, with Northshire, it doesn't matter as much, right? Like, you almost don't care. So, for the same reason, I think, the deck can still be tweaked. Like, there's room for Alex Straza, even, to beat control a lot more consistently. Like, you could find, again, a cut, say, in Northshire. Cut a Northshire, put in Alex. The card that I cut that I didn't realize would make such a big impact was Holy Smite. I toyed around with removing that 1 copy of it, and I thought, it's a flex, but it's not a flex.
No,
like
it's
I
really
thought,
good.
I thought the one of Holy Smite was flex for more card draw, but it's not. Like, how many times is a dude exactly at 21 health? And you just go double Mind Blast with Velen, and you're missing that extra bit of damage.
Yeah, just one little bit. Yeah.
It's insane how often it happens. And Holy Smite's just been super versatile. Like, you can kill Zoo, Shaman stuff with it.
Not to mention, it's like a swipe when you have a Wild Pyroman.
It's nuts, man. Yeah, it's great with that.
That's the biggest thing, actually. That I feel like it's great for helping to stay alive against Zoo. So this type of deck is the one, I feel like this was the type of deck that Embraced the Shadows was made for. This OTK type thing. That's what everybody's first
one more way to activate
was.
that damage. Yeah.
And I feel like it's really close to being viable. I mean, like, compare this deck to, say, the Combo Warrior deck, right? That we're about to talk about in a little bit. And Combo Warrior deck is really good right now in ladder. We're seeing that a lot because there's so many control decks right now, and it beats that. So if you compare that deck to this deck, like, what's the difference? And, like, the biggest difference is really just the ability to draw, right? With this deck, Priest right now just doesn't have a great drawing mechanism, and playing those crappy cards. Yeah, exactly. They don't have Battle Rage. And they don't have any kind of tempo-based cards either, like the Warrior does. So just to even alleviate damage, so priests kind of get the worst of both of it right now. They take damage and they can't draw cards like fast enough. So if they were to add a card that just allowed just a better drawing mechanic, or some kind of more consistent drawing mechanic, then I think we would get closer to making getting this kind of priest to work. How often do you draw through your entire deck? Like, does it happen
every
much?
game.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, every game. Well, I mean, honestly, every game I win, I'm basically down to like at most cards. At most, I had like 4 cards. And the games I've lost with this deck so far have been a pilot problem. More so like just me brain farting on like a bad sequence.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of tricky turns with a deck like this for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the standard tricky
line.
turns, right? Like, it's like the standard tricky turns The only issue is because I run double Northshire instead of maybe double Loot Hoarder, those tricky turns come up even more often.
Yeah.
Because you end up not having the guaranteed cycle and you have to time it. There's no injured Blade Master to abuse it, so you have to be super cautious.
Well, I remember watching Amnesiac play one of these decks in a
it
tournament.
was poorly played, dude. It was bad.
Yeah,
I casted that. It was bad.
Like you could see how hard the turns were because you just couldn't put the pieces together. Like the casters were trying to figure it out, he was trying to figure it out, and it was just there's like not enough time. The rope's happening and you freak out.
That was everybody was surprised he brought that, right? Like
when he brought all that.
I think.
Yeah. That was.
But also there's times where you're just like, I can get there. I have all the pieces. I have Velen's in the bottom of my deck, and this is never going to happen.
But that's kind of why the deck, like, I like this version more, is because the Azure Drakes just change like, to me at least, they've changed everything in this list. Like the Loot Hoarder, like I used to run double Acolyte, double Loot Hoarder, Blood Mage, Northshire, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But the Drakes weren't always included, and instead I was running like Novice Engineer to cycle even faster with double Embrace the Shadow, which wasn't bad, but it wasn't necessary, since if you just get a little bit more time through fighting for board, you do better. That's kind of what I found, and I don't know, like you can try the deck out honestly. Like if you want to, like, this deck, there's no way you can't get to Legend with this. There is literally zero way you cannot get there. Like it's guaranteed to be Legend viable. Like
to be Legend viable.
There is no way it's not. There is no way it's not. Literally no way it's not. You can tweak maybe again like the one Drake, one Northshire, find room for Harrison Jones, find room for another Loot Hoarder. But like I think this deck is 100% Legend viable. There's no way it's not. So.
All right. Yeah, particularly with the meta the way. I mean, I think this kind of combo decks just work against control decks. So with the meta the way it is right now, combo decks I think will always have some type of shot.
I guess your one issue would be armor building control warriors.
You just give up, honestly.
You can't do anything about that. Yeah.
I give up on that one. I just don't try.
Well, Alex Straza could help against that because
that's what I wanted in
32 or whatever, but not from 60.
Or just throw in Elise. Just throw in Elise. Screw everything else. I'm just going to make all these legends. And,
you guys fuck this game is not working.
Exactly. Right.
Honestly, though, it's not even a bad idea. If the metagame is super control heavy and you win against every control deck, aside from Control Warrior, sprinkling in Elise and just keeping all your situational cards for that Elise turn, that might end up just playing like a regular control priest.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, actually, we were going to talk about the combo word. But yeah, anyways, those are the priest decks we're working on. And again, some of these are more conceptual, and the whole point is really just to get everybody's ideas generating, and you guys to go and try some stuff out too, at home, and come up with a cool priest deck. But we did refer to the Combo Warrior. So this is kind of like the meta talk. So Combo Warrior has obviously made a huge rise in the meta and a lot of these meta reports. I played against it a lot, and unfortunately I've been playing so many control, maybe like late game decks with some mid-range minions in it too, and this deck is really strong against those type of decks. So I'm just like, oh my god, I just know what's gonna happen here in 10 turns, and I can't pressure him enough too, and it just drives me crazy. But yeah, what do you think of this deck? Will, what have you seen this deck a lot or no?
Yeah, no, I was playing this exact list last night. It's awesome. I think to really pilot this deck properly though, you need to understand your spots. So you need to understand, like, if I have the full combo, it's this much. If I have these pieces, it's this much. And you really kind of have to have those numbers solid, because there's going to be a lot of turns where you're missing one of the pieces, or you have to get through one taunt, or you have to do something where it gets a little skewed, and you have to quickly be able to figure this out, because the actual animation times of it, if you start doing it while you're roping, you got to drag 4 attacks over the face with it. So I think that's, if I could give a piece of advice to anybody, sit down and figure that out before you really start to play it. But after that, it's like you just kind of concentrate on drawing through your deck and keeping the board as clear as possible, so you're not going to die. And outside of that, it's like, oh, look at that, there's all my combo pieces. Like, it just kind of magically comes together at a certain point in the game. And I found it to be, because Math Warrior was always this thing where people talked about how the skill cap was so high to play this. And I feel like this version of the deck is maybe the most user-friendly version that I've seen so far. Which is awesome for the rest of us that aren't Naria and Neville's and
I mean, it's really interesting though, because it's running like one rampage instead of the two that we used to run, but instead of being like the Neria deck that existed like decades ago almost. There were 2 organs. It was running all the cycle in the world, and basically relied only on that to win. But it didn't fare too well against aggro decks because they didn't have Ravaging Ghoul. And what's fantastic about the current meta, or at least the current Warriors, because of Ravaging Ghoul, because of Blood to Ichor, or Ichor, however you pronounce that, like those cards are just straight up good against aggro. And suddenly, because they're there, often you can just sneak in good removal through the bodies themselves. The deck plays Wild Pyromancer, which also makes a lot of sense. So you already farm all the aggro decks baseline, and because you're comboing for like, I think you can cap at 52 with 2 organs, double in range, rampage, charge,
right,
and like if we're just assuming 52 damage on the full combo with Emperor, everything discounted, then you beat every control deck that's not a warrior with 74 armor. And even then, you can still do it.
Still win, yeah.
And if you get the Cruel Taskmaster in, then suddenly you're weaving in an extra 8 damage to 60, so you can still beat some of those higher attacks. It's ridiculous, is what I'm saying. And you always draw through your entire deck, which is important because you other combo decks like the Priest doesn't. This one does. It finds,
the
finds a way.
The Priest deck is what, like 30 damage, so
you can do 40, but good luck, dude.
You can do 40, but exactly. One of your combo pieces costs 7 right away, and then but this like having 52 and then being able to go like, oh, well, I don't have all the pieces. It's only 48. It's like
it's all right.
I mean, it's usually it's only 30 something, but 40 is when you have to have the dream. Like you have to have the faceless on an entire deck that's been empered for the most part. So so those of you listening,
how often I got the 52. Like it wasn't that
really. Gosh, hard. I've never had somebody do 52. I've had somebody do 44 and 48.
You can do 30 with 1 Worgen. You don't even need faceless. You can literally do 30 with 1 Worgen.
Yeah.
Like
you
just
can do 30.
double inner rage,
it's
rampage, charge.
Yeah, that's generally how I lose when I'm playing.
You have to have the Cruel Task as well, right? Though, so to make
sure,
that happen.
but like you can substitute the faceless for the Cruel Task, and you still have 1 Worgen that kills someone in one hit. So honestly, this deck has just been great against mostly everything, and you usually race fast enough against even control warriors that they never get to that high amount of armor. Like that's the funny thing is you draw so quick that they don't have time to get the armor count.
See, that's what I was saying about just the OTK priest deck, which again, for the audio listeners, I apologize, we didn't really describe it well enough. The priest deck had the Prophet's Valens and Embrace the Shadows, as well as a lot of the heals and spells and the Emperor Thors, and like you've seen in a lot of the OTK priests. It's not really a lot of ton of new concepts, just kind of combination of those things. With the OTK Warrior, this one, we talked about drawing, the cards like Battle Rage and Commanding Shout and Loot Hoarders and Acolyte of Pain and Shield Blocks. I mean, that amounts to 12 cards, 14 cards that you're drawing, and that's the reason why you can get this thing done. And when you see the Emperor Thor's go down in turn 6, I just almost want to pick the concede button because I know it's extremely, extremely bad for me. Or at least even Emperor Thor's on turn 8 or 9. It's crazy bad for you.
Like my favorite thing that they did though with this deck was the Commanding Shout, man. Like
the wild
for so long that was just. But when you Commanding Shout with a Pyromancer and then you just start doing like Blood to Ichors and all this weird stuff, like you just keep doing what It's like I'm basically cycling my deck and I'm flame striking your board. It's like at the same time.
Dude, it's so nasty.
Disgusting.
That combination of Wild Pyro into Blood to Ichor directly into Commanding Shout means they both survive, and then you Battle Rage on top. You've dealt 3 damage in
Acolytes too, right? I mean, it's just triggering Acolytes too. I've seen disgusting plays with it. It's definitely bad, yeah. And then it's your turn, right? And you still have to clear the guys, and you're still worried about your health because you don't want to lose before he gets 30. So it's definitely frustrating to play against this deck, even when you have Reno decks and things like that. It doesn't even matter, this deck just counters it all.
Cards like that allow you to only play the single Worgen and the single charge, because you used to see this deck back in the day. It was like you were double Worgening and you're doing all this stuff to make sure you got to the combo. Yeah, and I was like, we're getting there. We don't care about that. We're gonna get there. It's fine. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyways, give it a try, guys. Really strong deck. You can definitely climb the legend with this deck. This deck is pretty easy to climb the legend actually.
Oh yeah.
So it's fun too. All right. Well, next up, what are we going to talk about here? Oh, the next adventure. Yes. So, is everybody? You guys think it's going to be Karazhan at this point? I mean, is everybody?
I mean, I called it. I said we're gonna party in Medivh's basement with imps and demons, like imps and flesh beasts. So I'm assuming the magical, majestic thing actually resonates with that.
Yeah,
it does.
So
the other theory though is Darkmoon Fair,
yeah,
which doesn't seem completely ridiculous to me, but. Then recently there was we saw the full invite or whatever to the stream, and there's like feathers at the bottom, and that really feels like Medivh to me, right? So,
yeah, the raven.
Yeah.
Medivh transformed into a raven for those.
And plus, the movie just came out. We just got Gul'dan and Heroes of the Storm. Like it all kind of feels like Blizzard is kind of like, hey, let's just let's really push this theme here. Medivh and Gul'dan and these guys. This is
Oh man.
I mean,
so is Mage getting
the whole damn thing? So
is Mage getting a buff then?
No.
Oh gosh,
no,
please tell me they're not.
The Forgotten Frostbolt, 1 mana, 3 damage, shuffle like a frost lance in your deck, and it deals 8 damage. Like one of the cool things,
you
though.
don't fight Medivh, so
never,
yeah.
He's just there. We knew about him. We find his book and stuff, and like that's
there's a lot of lore. Have you read the books for World of Warcraft? Because there's an entire book. Like there's a few of them actually, but like one of them is literally kind of dedicated to learning about the last days of Medivh's, like as he's going insane, not the last days, but as he's going a little bit insane, or at least what the world perceived back then as insane. You kind of see a little bit of that story in the book.
Being possessed by a demon, I think, constitutes insane. Yeah.
I would say that, but I mean, he's still in there, right? Like he's battling the demon. Spoilers, a little bit too late, but in a nutshell, like Medivh is not really an enemy, right? He's more of a friendly.
Well, he's the guardian.
He's the guardian. He's just
right.
corrupted by Fel, basically.
But then he gets corrupted.
Yeah. So the stream sounds like it's going to be July 28th, so they'll be revealing, I guess, what it is on July 28th. Not coming out on July 28th, guys. So just revealing what it is, and then hopefully we'll find out how the announcement of just cards and things will be. It is an adventure, so it's not a full-out expansion set.
Yeah,
so
we'll get like 45 cards, something like that.
Yeah. So,
but I think it's like that. It's getting a little ripe right now. Like I think we're struggling. We're going back to OTK decks. So it's like I think we're ready for an infusion of some new cards. And we talked about this on the Angry Chicken that we really hoped for this schedule that was always going to kind of be where we get the final expansion would come a little bit before BlizzCon, so that you would see at the BlizzCon tournament the biggest set of cards you'll see the entire year, and you'll see like the decks that the pros come up with at that point. And if it were to repeat like that every year, that'd be awesome. And now as we're getting a little bit late, where if this is the adventure and the announcement's the 28th, and then it'll be however long after that, then when is that last expansion of the year coming? So it's like Christmas. I'm ready for cards just all the time, but I'm hoping that this isn't the schedule going forward every single year. I want
it is right now based on what they said. We've talked about that a ton, and I think that's the biggest gripe we have with the game in a way is that because of the fact that this is we live in a digital era, right? Like, so people just know the quote unquote best decks, or at least the metagame, really quickly. Like after the expansion release, people watch streams. And as a result, I mean, I think the content needs to come out faster. And one of the things that Reynad suggested that was great is just between expansion sets, just release, say, every 2 weeks, like release 5 cards, just shake shit up a little bit. Doesn't even have to be like an entire expansion. Even every month, release a little bit of stuff.
I think it's tough, with that too, because it's, I have mixed feelings about that, because just getting new content that frequently is amazing. Like I'd love it, just as a hardcore Hearthstone player. But at the same time, it's like, what would the events be like? I mean, you'd start seeing the meta would never stabilize ever.
Also,
building. I kind of like to see it, build up to events, and not like 4 or 5 months, that sort of thing. But I'd like to see like 2 months or a month and a half that the players get to really figure this stuff out and then go duke it out. Where if it was like every week or every 2 weeks, you'd literally just be seeing brand new decks. People, it's not even refined, just winning tournaments, and that doesn't really reflect who the best Hearthstone players are necessarily.
Well, they wouldn't be brand new decks either, though. They would just be
there'd be
it would be like a couple of new cards enter into this deck. Like, oh, it's Yogg Druid with this card. And that's kind of what you'd end up seeing. But think about like in Magic, it's a little different because the meta is really defined after like big tournaments that happen, and in between the tournaments, no one's really watching,
there's no stream
play on stream every day, getting top 1 legend and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So like the meta shifts a little bit faster in Hearthstone, and people come up with a deck and then it's showcased like almost instantly. So it is tough. I mean, I think there's definitely merit to infusing content more often, but I still like the big kind of expansion with a theme and the idea.
Right, I agree.
It's a product release.
It's
a product release too. It's like if you're thinking of it from the standpoint of Blizzard needing to announce something big and release a product, it almost has to be like a set, a pretty big set.
But like in Heroes of the Storm, they introduce a new hero every 3 weeks, and then it doesn't do anything to the meta. Everyone still plays the same like 12 heroes because it's one little bit. And I think you couldn't just introduce like here's one new legendary card and then everyone would be like, okay, cool.
But I think that'd be cool, like between content releases, right? That's why I'm not advocating for cut the adventures and cut the.
But just add on.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm for that.
If
I
not,
just want more stuff. Give me more stuff.
You know what? If it's not that, I would like to see at least like features and stuff like that bundled up as a release in between card releases. Like
well,
the
we have
friend.
more goal.
That's like I'd like to see share a friend with 3 more skins, or
what are you talking about? We get a new feature every week, dude. Tavern Brawl.
Oh man, that feature.
Okay, that's
well played. Well done.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, why don't we move on? Talk a little bit about some of the events that happened this week and that are going to happen this weekend. So Dreamhack Valencia happened last weekend, and we had a new name, a new face win the championship. Evangeline won over Crane, who we've actually seen quite a bit recently. Crane's a great player. And the notable deck that Evangeline was running was the Paladin, the good old N'Zoth Paladin, which doesn't do very well in ladder, but for some reason at these events it keeps showing up and doing really, really well. Thoughts on why it keeps working, I guess, at these? Is it just the format?
Good players play it really well. It's not a deck that you can just shove into anybody's hands and they can, rock out on the ladder with. But also it does well in a slower meta too, which is generally what you see outside of the shamans and stuff. But you see a typically slower meta in tournaments.
I mean, you have to run like really lucky to win with that deck. Like
really?
No offense to anyone. Yeah.
So you're calling him lucky? Is that what you're calling him?
No, you have to run really. I mean, you have to run really lucky to win. I think he went something like 12-0, 12-1, 12-2, or something ridiculous in the round of 16. So like, as much as I have faith in the N'Zoth Paladin and I want to see the deck succeed, I'm sorry, but like, it doesn't win that often, that consistently against everything. Like it's, I mean, you could kind of see it even like in the finals against Crane. Like, there's a few games that look like, oh, it's going to go to the other player, and then, well, he found a good card, and that's kind of the weakness of that deck. Just like Priest struggles to find the right card at the right time, I think the N'Zoth Paladin has the exact same issue.
Well,
it's got fail safes in place. It's trying to heal itself back up to get a second chance, but it needs to run like really good in order to compete against those.
Well, you saw, I mean, when Chalky won Dreamhack Austin, he hit the concealed auctioneer with the Ragnaros, and he had a lot of moments like that too, where it was like, oh, he drew that. Oh, that's what he needed. So, I mean, I think Noxious is right. There is something to that, where sometimes a deck might not be the perfect deck, but it's a deck that has potential to just draw that perfect card, right? And when you just kind of get a little bit lucky, you win all the races in a poker tournament or something, and you win, and so like you win all the top deck wars in Hearthstone and you win.
I mean,
I think that's one of those decks. But I think this one is like a worse offender than like, let's say Aggro Shaman, right? You'll get more consistent starts as Aggro Shaman than the N'Zoth Paladin. You'll get more consistent starts as Yogg Druid than you will as Paladin. Yet this Paladin beat them all.
Are you serious?
Yeah, Yogg Druid is
that's totally a deck though. That's all about getting the right card at the right moment too.
No, come on, dude. No,
Oh
no,
my
no, no.
God.
Yeah,
Are
but
you
you just get wild
serious?
growth on turn 2 every time, and then you're good. That's a
No,
consistent
y'all-
start right there,
Good.
all by itself.
Y'all Druid has he's got three pronged threat. It's got the 4-draw plays with Fangirl and Violet Teachers. It's got the Ram that will wreck you anyway, and it's got Yogg. So it's like whatever happens, it's got 4 avenues to winning, and they don't all rely on like one single card. I mean, your win rate will go up with Wild Growth, but it's like N'Zoth Paladin doesn't have a 3-pronged threat. It's got one line of one game plan. Just like
Yeah,
Aggro Shaman has 3-pronged threats in getting the totem play with Thing from Below, or the Overload play with the other ones, or Doomhammer. They've got like 3 angles that you have to try to fight off against at the same time. N'Zoth only has one, and you have to run really well to get it like every single game. Like it's really tough.
It is really tough, but so I mean, I guess I'll be the devil's advocate here, or at least
Sure.
the counterpart. The
Go
one
ahead.
thing about Paladin though is that it has a very powerful board removal, which is an equality, and everybody's always playing around it too. Like at any
Yeah.
time, this is a full board removal that can happen on turn 2. I mean turn 4, sorry, turn 4. Where like other board removals like Twisting Nether and things like that, I mean that happens later in the game, so you can actually develop boards and maybe get some damage in, just get your board set up. Against Paladin, you're always wary of that, so you're always potentially playing incorrect or just wrong, against what the Paladin actually has in his hand. So he always has that aspect to it. Also, I mean, he's got quite they have quite a bit of heal in this deck too. I mean, Forbidden Healing. This is one of the heaviest heal decks that you'll see in Hearthstone right now. So that in itself is what makes it just at least gives them even more of a chance, right, to get to the end, which is the end game. And then just Tyrion. Tyrion by itself in the N'Zoth deck makes this N'Zoth deck a little bit better than the others, because that's one of the best Death Rattle deck cards in the game. So as a N'Zoth deck, this still is one of the best ones. It's just it's interesting that it performs so badly on ladder, just giving ladder meta.
Yeah.
Yet it still does well at tournaments, and it's done well at like several tournaments now. Starting back in Austin, but even to date, I think it's done well at even some events between Valencia and Austin. So it'll be interesting if we see it this weekend at Seatstory, which is coming up.
Well, a little bit at least.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we might.
We might steal a little bit of it. I think like one of the really interesting things about the deck is like some of its weaknesses are like really, really, really obvious, but they don't get played much right now. Like Priest, for instance, would just auto win
Yes,
if
that's
built
true.
properly. But like
Yeah.
you can't play Priest. I mean, good luck. You can try,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
good luck. And Last Hero Standing with like a combo warrior, not so much. Like it's pretty tough to justify. So you want to bring like Dragon Warrior or Cthulhu Warrior. And the whole, Reno Lock as well. I think Sivko was running Reno Lock
Yeah.
again. And usually he runs like a combo last list, which means you walk all over it with the Paladin list. You're just all right, we're going to
Yeah.
play both in the N'Zoth deck, but mine,
That's true.
will heal me repeatedly like a Reno with Forbidden Healing, and yours won't. So good luck dealing with my Tyrion. Even if you have these, I have like 3 weapons with the Rallying Blade, which is also a really big deal, by the
Yeah,
way.
the
I'm
Rallying
glad
Blade's
that he
been really
included
good.
it
Mhm.
because that card has been way too disregarded by the community. I feel like initially people were trying it out, and because you don't see much Paladin, and as a result you don't see much Rallying Blade, people seem to think that it's relegated to those hyper aggressive lists with Argent Squires. But that card is just good. Like if you would play Hornbow and Hunter without traps, then why wouldn't you play Rallying Blade and Paladin?
Yeah.
Like it's just so good.
That's true.
So anyway, I
Yeah.
guess I'm done talking about the whole N'Zoth Paladin deck. I really don't believe in the deck as much as people do. It keeps feeling like a fluke whenever it works. I don't know why.
You're going robot on us a little bit, but I think I made it out. Yeah, it's just curious, and I think it does have a lot to do with the format, like you said. Just only being able to bring one type of the other classes, I think really minimizes or at least shrinks down the number of decks that are actually good against the Paladin deck. So Seat Story's coming up, so might as well just segue into Seat Story. It's Take's tournament that he does over there, and it's always a really great time. And actually, Noxious, you're at the last one, right?
Yes, it was
Yeah.
great.
And they announced the players today, and gosh, the players, crazy list actually. Did you guys see the player lineup
Yeah.
there?
It's actually funny because for a long time people were kind of against these invite tournaments, but since the change in the World Championship format, it's like a welcome change now to see this tournament again with this kind of lineup. It's going to be exciting to actually see all these names that everyone knows. Yeah. I want there to be a mix, you know. I want there to be tournaments that are open and we see fresh faces. Yeah. Then I want to see these types of tournaments. And also, there's a lot of faces that weren't known before that are known now because of some of the other stuff that are now getting the invite. Which I think is really cool. You know, seeing like a guy like Terrence and stuff.
Yeah.
Invited, I think is awesome.
I'm hyped.
We had him on the Angry Chicken. He was a fantastic guest, and just met him at Dreamhack. He was really nice there too. So I mean, it's just cool to see some of these new faces now kind of getting into the old boys club, if you want to call it that. But and we get to see Forsen versus Nostum again, right? Which I think we're all excited for.
Yeah, we'll even get to see Terrence versus Reynad, and Terrence. Yeah, I mean, it's just gonna be a meme fest on Twitch. I can see it already.
Oh gosh, it is definitely great to see some of these. Like you said, a really mixture of a lot of the guys that we've been seeing doing well in the big tournaments, as well as some of our favorites. And Take's always been really, really good about that. And we talked about this exact thing last week. And this is definitely great with Jackie. Seeing Jackie there and Yagut. I mean, I remember talking to those two guys when they were on our show. It's just like, you guys never get invited to anything. What the hell? Seriously?
And then suddenly,
look, like
a wild invite appears.
Yeah, a wild invite appears. Nice. But anyways, definitely check it out, guys. I think Frodan again is playing in it. I believe he was
playing
practicing
and casting. I think
doing double duty. He's playing and casting, so he did great last time. So I actually hope he has another great run this time around.
We'll find out what Clown Fiesta decks he brings, but.
Well, he was debating.
He's gonna take it seriously.
He was debating whether to take it seriously or Clown Fiesta. I'm not sure what he decided on. It's nice.
If he gets out of his group, it's still gonna be like he's got Askaka and JJ, which I'd argue are two of the best players. And I'd say JJ is probably like in the top 5 players in the world, talent wise right now. And Frodan's got a huge group, like Askaka, obviously. Although I don't know how much Askaka will have practiced, right? It's one of those things where ever since he won, he doesn't seem to have been giving much of a fuck about anything.
He's done. He's accomplished it. I'm a world champ.
I beat Hearthstone. I'm out. Peace.
I beat Hearthstone.